here, and as mentioned, today I'll be presenting our pilot study that we completed at the beginning of this year, and I have no disclosures. So a little bit on the inspiration behind the study. In January 2024, I came across some content from a man named Paul McKinnon from Australia, and he's here pictured on the right working with Olympic medalist Gait, and he has many different cues and propositions for improving a runner's biomechanics that I had not yet encountered up until that point. And one of the cues or adjustments he focused on with the athlete is correcting the arm positioning and swing mechanics when they're running. And he quotes a couple things, one being that objectively we start to see changes that would make the runner more economical physiologically, while subjectively feeling as though the proposed change was more fluid and natural than what most are used to. And that secondarily, the runner would experience changes in their stride mechanics and landing pattern despite only manipulating the positioning and movement pattern of their arms alone. Later that same spring, there was a 14-year-old athlete I've been working with that we'll call Matthew, that I had proposed this arm swing change with. And with only that change alone, I was seeing some differences in his lower extremity stride mechanics and landing positioning. That was the first time I realized that there might be something here. In the top picture on the left, you can see Matthew, who liked to naturally run with his arm seen quite low and the angle of his elbow joint exceeding well over 90 degrees. And in that same picture, at the moment his heel is striking the ground, you notice that his leg is it's sort of in a oblique orientation in relation to the ground and stretched out in front of his kneecap. And then in the second picture below, you'll see that his arm mid-swing is held much closer to his body, and the angle of his elbow joint is likely somewhere around 45 degrees. And his leg at the moment of impact is vertical and basically perfectly perpendicular in relation to his knee, and that will give you an indication of some of the things we were looking for as we went about the study. The primary goal outcomes in any running biomechanics research, generally speaking, is to track how well the proposed changes affect either performance or injury risk. Historically, the model that most gait training research studies have followed is that they collect several baseline data points that are believed to have correlation with injury risk, such as loading rates, cadence, many different lower extremity joint angles. They will then introduce one or a series of cues that they think will help promote a certain change, and then have the participant trained in that cue over the course of several weeks. And then after all the gait training sessions have been completed, they collect post-gait training measurements to analyze objective improvements and or conduct surveys to see if the injured athlete has experienced subjective improvement in their symptoms. Key things we've learned about running biomechanics in general that have been reproduced consistently and have become acceptable endpoints to obtain with gait training include the following. We know that a higher cadence has been linked to decreasing loading rates, as well as an improvement in reported pain in runner injuries such as patellofemoral pain syndrome. We also know that gait training focusing on forefoot striking alone has been linked to a decrease in loading rates, as well as an increase in cadence itself. When it comes to the role of arm swing, we know that arm swing increases balance by decreasing frontal plane motion through the head, shoulders, and pelvis. We know also that total metabolic energy consumption is shown to be decreased when running with an active arm swing versus a fixed or passive arm swing. So we know that arm swing provides some benefit while running that is not seen when restricted, but is not even explored to see if there is an optimal way to swing your arms that has indirect downstream effects on the lower extremities, and that's what we sought out to explore. We described our proposed arm swing mechanics as having three components as demonstrated in the picture above. First being that the elbow joint is flexed at an angle of roughly 45 degrees. Second being that the shoulder joint is deviated with the midline of the body, also roughly at 45 degrees. And third being that the arm swings vertical without crossing the midline of the body, and we tell the participants to use their chin as a reference point for what to strike towards. We hypothesized that participants that adopted the proposed arm swing mechanics would present with upper and lower extremity kinematic changes, as well as spatiotemporal parameters that have historically been associated with improved performance and decreased injury risk. So the study was open to participants between the ages of 18 and 65 that run at least 30 minutes per week with no prior history of gait training with the primary investigator myself, or current injuries that would alter their baseline running mechanics. Prior to each research session, we collected basic demographic information as well as a brief running history questionnaire from each participant, which asked them about the number of years they've been running long distances consistently, as well as the number of miles they run per week for the 4 weeks prior to the study. To capture our data, we used Ouchie, which is a phone application that uses AI to perform gait analysis. We used the same Computerized pace GPS watch to determine running pace and cadence of each of our participants. Largely procedural portion of how the study was carried out. Participants would start the GPS watch and run overground for about 2 to 3 minutes, completing 2 loops around the clinic parking lot, which allowed me to take a video from each side of their body as they would run by. Upon completion of the second loop, they would stop the GPS watch, and then videos were uploaded to the application. Participants were then taken indoors to complete the treadmill portion of the study. The same matrix treadmill was utilized, and participants were instructed to run at the speed setting that was closest to the pace they ran over ground. After about 2.5 to 3 minutes of acclimating to the treadmill, we then captured a video from each side of their body and again uploaded to the application to be analyzed. Then gait training utilizing the new arm swing positioning was conducted, and upon demonstration of execution of the new arm swing mechanics, both stationary and while running to our satisfaction, the protocol for data collection, both overground and indoors on the treadmill, was repeated for the post-gait training portion of the study. This just shows a breakdown of our demographics: 6 males, 6 females, for a total of 12 participants, with a median number of years of running being 15.5 and a median average number of miles run per week for the 4 weeks leading up to the study being 20 miles. And here you'll see an example of what the videos would look like when they're analyzed by the ASHI application. And these are 2 videos of the same athlete, with the above video being before gait training and the video below is after gait training. This is for And here's an example of some of the information the ASHI application gives you, and these are the metrics for the previous athlete shown. So on the left, it shows the metrics before gait training, and after is on the right. For him, you can see that he had increased time of flight and decreased ground contact time, so that means he was spending more time in the air and less time on the ground, which is what we'd want to see. His cadence remained the same at about 174 steps per minute, but his step length increased by about 5 inches each step, which to me indicates he was more propulsive and stepping further with each step as a result. Here is some information given with respect to joint angles before and after gait training within the application. If you were to click on each of these individual squares, it would show you the actual angle that was calculated. But on a surface level, what we saw here with this athlete was that he had an improvement in overstride angle in relation to the hip, a improvement in forward lean of the torso, and a decrease in the heel kick angle. As for the results of our study found a statistically significant decrease in elbow joint angle after gait training, both on the treadmill and overground, which just means that our cue was implemented correctly. There was also a statistically significant increase in stride length when running on the treadmill, as well as a decrease in heel kick angle when running overground. There was also an increase in step length that was seen when running overground after gait training that didn't quite meet the accepted criteria of statistical significance, being at 0.06. There were no statistically significant changes found in the other variables measured after gait training. Participants, both overground or on the treadmill, in each of the following variables, including overstride angle of the foot in relation to the hip, knee joint flexion angle, back position, time of flight, ground contact time, or duty factor. And there were also no statistically significant correlations found between the number of years running or the amount of running volume completed on average in the 4 weeks leading up to the study, with any of the other variables above that changed significantly following gait training. So our study showed that after only a single gait training session, participants could adopt the new arm swing mechanics while running and immediately begin to see measurable improvements in their biomechanics when running both on the treadmill and overground. While we did see several significant results as well as others trending towards significance, there were several data points where we didn't quite see the improvements in the ways that we expected. So now I'll go through a few reasons for why I think that might have been the case. First, being a small sample size, this was a pilot study, so we didn't quite have the minimum population of about 30 participants that are generally considered adequate to determine significance in biomechanical studies. Second, being inconsistent pacing. 6 of our 12 participants ran at a pace that was at least 30 seconds per mile faster during the post-gait training portion of the study. This could be related to a number of reasons, including increased muscle tension, which just means the muscles are more quote-unquote warmed up after the first sessions. There could be psychological adaptations associated with running using this new recommended gait pattern, or there could be, of course, true mechanical advantage from the modified movement pattern. This, on one hand, calls into question the significance of the arm carriage modification on the increase in step length in both indoors and overground, since step length is expected to increase in conjunction with running pace. Despite this increase in running pace, there was minimal increase in overstride angle, which helped farther runner's leg and reach out beyond the level of their knee, both on the treadmill and overground. And this was a positive finding, considering the expected increase in this angle as the pace increases. So therefore, it's plausible to suspect that the arm carriage modification could have prevented the overstride angle from increasing in the first place. Third being a lack of a post-gait training control data set. Ideally, we would have added an additional running session for each participant on the treadmill after gait training to help us determine which biomechanical changes we are seeing could be directly attributed to the gait modification alone rather than a difference in running pace. Unfortunately, this would have meant a total of 5 different running sessions compared to 4, and ultimately was not added due to what we realized was inadequate aerobic conditioning of our participants. Fifth being software inaccuracies, product or user error. There's likely a combination of both. Each of our videos were taken at a rate of 30 frames per second, which was less than the 60 frames per second or more recommended by Ouchie. Additionally, it was recommended that videos were taken roughly 6 feet away from the participants, but this was never strategically mapped out as we prioritized standing further away from each participant to collect more data points per video. However, even when roughly 6 feet away measuring participants on the treadmill, there was a variability in data points between videos, as well as data points that seemed too unrealistic to take at face value, so that raised some suspicion of the accuracy of the software. Which brings me to my last point, which was there are questions about the reliability of these markerless motion capture systems as a whole. In a company-sponsored study on the Ouchie website comparing reliability and accuracy of their markerless system versus traditional marker-based systems, precision values of spatial temporal parameters such as cadence, ground contact time, and swing time were recorded as being between 88 to 98%. However, when it came to evaluating kinematic parameters of the lower extremity joints, the software was found to have low accuracy. Furthermore, this accuracy was diminished when evaluating smaller extremity joints such as the elbow, and with the elbow being the manipulated variable of our study, this must prompt at least some questioning of the validity of our recorded joint angles. In conclusion, there were some results calculating our study using the Ouchie Gait analysis application that seemed to indicate that optimization of arm swing mechanics alone can indirectly promote numerous biomechanical changes that have historically been associated with improved performance and decreased injury risk. Further research with a larger applicant pool will be needed to increase the power of our studies and further delineate trends in biomechanical changes that have been instigated by alterations in arm swing mechanics alone. Lastly, further education will be needed on the utilization of markerless video capture systems to ensure that providers and researchers alike are obtaining the most accurate results possible. Any questions?